The Legend of Billy Green by Mr. Steeves. This monument stands on the site of the Battle of Stoney Creek, where on June 6, 1813, British troops attacked the American army and stopped their advance into Upper Canada forever. Close by this large monument stands another, much smaller one, this one. And inscribed in this monument is the heroic story of a 19-year-old boy that helped the British to win the battle, what to Hamiltonians has come to be known as the Legend of Billy Green. But first, some background. On May 27, 1813, the Americans attacked and took possession of Fort George in Newark, or what is now Niagara-on-the-Lake, and forced the British to retreat to what is now Hamilton. This capture reversed the result of the battle at Queenston Heights only half a year earlier, when General Brock led a chancy and fatal charge against the Americans to keep them from advancing into Upper Canada. Now the Americans had a foothold in Upper Canada, and they began the long, slow march westward through the swamp and dense forest in pursuit of the British. The British situation at this point was not looking good. The Americans had just 1 month earlier attacked Fort York on the 27th of April, pushing the British troops there as far east as Kingston. The Americans also had control of the west side of Lake Ontario and Lake Erie, so taking out the British in the Niagara region would create a serious wedge between the British at Kingston in the east and the British at the recently won Fort Detroit in the west. So the British hunkered down at Burlington Heights and waited for the Blue Coats to arrive. And they did, on June 5th, stopping just east of the British at Stoney Creek for some R&R Army style, which means taking over local farms, stealing food, and forcing people out of their homes, and arresting them when they resist, which they did to Isaac Corman, Billy Green's brother-in-law. The story goes that Isaac was taken to the bay and held by American soldiers, but was released when he stated that he was related to the American general, William Henry Harrison. Not an unlikely story, since he was a loyalist who had fled from the States about 30 years earlier. The soldiers let him go, but they needed to tell him the secret code so he could pass by the American sentries without getting killed. And what was that secret code? Will Hen Har, after the general's name, William Henry Harrison. In a brief moment of intelligence, the Americans decided that telling the password was not a good idea. So they went and captured Corman again, but not before his meeting Billy Green and telling him the secret code. Billy Green quickly found his way through the dark woods to Burlington Heights to tell the British General Harvey the secret code. The British were outnumbered, even with the help of several First Nations warriors and volunteers, so they decided that a sneak attack at night was their best chance at survival. They used the password to sneak up on the sentries, slit their throats, and advance to the American encampment to a mostly sleeping American army. What followed was little less than utter mayhem. American troops ran about in panic, while the British did little better, getting lost in the dark of the woods. In one successful charge, the British 49th Regiment, led by Charles Plenderleath, took over the Americans' artillery position and captured 2 generals, including General John Chandler. This was enough to scare the Americans away, so by the next morning the Americans retreated to Fort George. And as this cartoon shows, they never returned again. Is the legend of Billy Green true? We know that Billy Green was born and lived in Stoney Creek, and could possibly have been the first European child born in the area. His family were loyalists, having fled from the United States after the War of Independence, and his descendants continued to live in the area to this day. What do we know about his role in the battle? The story is inscribed in this memorial, which was erected in his memory in 1938. The same year that the family revealed a letter allegedly written by Billy to his grandson John, and a sword, allegedly the gift of John Harvey to Billy the Scout. We also know that in 1875, an 81-year-old man appeared at a pension meeting for 1812 war vets, claiming to be Billy Green, the hero of the Battle of Stoney Creek. Some historians, however, disagree. James Elliott, author of this book in 2008 in support of the story, changed his mind later in this book. As for me, I always like a good story and see no evidence or reason not to believe it. And besides, if I didn't believe it, I'd have to stop playing Stan Rogers' song, Billy Green the Scout. And that's just wrong. So as for me, long live the legend of Billy Green. The Legend of Billy Green, brought to you by Mr. Steve's and Gecko Steve's YouTube channel. Keep calm and get a gecko.
Attend you all good countrymen, my name is Billy Green, and I will tell of things I did when I was just 19. I helped defeat the Yank invader, there can be no doubt.